I'm going to need another mic or I broke the microphone. Can you hear me all right with this? I just have to hold it up. It's broken. The clip broke. Unless we have another, we don't have another one, do we? Okay, we'll just go with this. I do want to welcome everyone. Happy New Year. I want to welcome everyone who's watching us online today. We have several. I'm just amazed every time I hear from, we had a guy last week that was visiting from out of state, and he said, I've never seen you live. I get to watch you every week on TV, but so I feel like I know our church, but it's really neat to hear people who do watch us online. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. You got all the gifts that you wanted. It's interesting what our expectations are. So I know a little 6-year-old girl in our church who was very disappointed on Christmas Day. And her parents asked her, why are you disappointed? Well, I didn't get what I wanted. Remember, she's 6 years old. She said, they said, well, what did you want? She said, I wanted a new iPhone, I wanted an iPad, and I want my own car. And she's disappointed she didn't get a car. That would be my granddaughter, yes. Next week, we're going to start a series called Recalibrate. We're going to talk about recalibrating areas of our life, maybe making some adjustments in 2023. We talk about those resolutions. We're going to make some recalibrations. But today I want to preach a sermon. I want to ask one question. And that question, actually I'm going to ask several questions today. I don't want to mislead you. But the question I want to answer today is what the world needs. So I want to focus on what the world needs. When you were shopping in the stores the last couple of weeks or months, and the companies that have all those stuff out there, sometimes they're subtly and sometimes they're not so subtly telling us, this is what you need. This is exactly what you need. You need the right gift with the right brand name. Many of our kids, and this is not a new thing, this has been going on for a long time. Many of our kids want certain brand names because they're accepted when they have that certain brand. You may say, well, I'm going to buy you a pair of Nike shoes, and they'll say, no, I want Jordan brand Nikes, or I want Under Armour shoes and clothing. I was amazed. Now, I know most of you don't follow college football. There were some fabulous games last night that you missed, but that's all, neither here nor there. But they just finished the first signing of football recruits. And I was amazed at the number of recruits, 18-year-old boys who are saying, I want to go to that school because they wear that brand of clothing. And I thought, what a crazy reason to pick a school, but that's what they wanted. But let's not put it all on our kids. We can become that way too. Some of us like only and can only have Ethiopian coffee from Starbucks at $5 or $6 a whack. There are some in the room who are Folger classic coffee snobs. It's the only kind they can eat. And if it isn't Folger's classic, they can tell the difference. It just blows me away. They can tell the difference. Years ago, Brenda and I had a Harley Davidson. And we wouldn't be caught dead wearing anything but Harley Davidson clothing. You know, you had to have the coat, you had to have the gloves, you had to have Harley Davidson. And let me just tell you, if you're not into motorcycles, if it just says the word Harley Davidson, add a 0 or 2 to the price tag, okay? They're just not cheap. I want you to listen to a statement by a guy. It's in your outline. So if you have your outline, I'm going to fill in the blanks for you. This is a statement by Wright Thompson. And there's a big word in there. Don't worry about the big word. I'll explain to you what he's talking about. Here's what Wright Thompson writes. The homogenization of America has left people wandering the land in search of a place to belong. We are a tribeless nation hunting for tribes. Let me say it again. The homogenization of America has left people wandering the land in search of a place to belong. We are a tribeless nation hungry for tribes. We want to belong. Everybody wants to belong. Our kids want to belong. We want to belong. Everywhere you can buy the same t-shirt at Walmart, Target, probably Penny's, the same thing. You can get the same coffee at any Starbucks or a Big Mac from McDonald's. But people still are striving to belong. You see, I don't want the same thing as everyone else. I want to be known to belong to something that is truly, and here's the word for today, truly authentic. That's what I believe the world needs today. It needs an authentic church. It needs an authentic church, and that's point one. What the world needs now is an authentic church. When your friends look, your unchurched friends, look at the church, what do they see? When they look at Christians, what do they see? Some may look at us as pretenders, as fakes, as phonies, or wearing a mask. So I want us to dig deep into the opportunity we have to live the most authentic lives possible. I love this statement. It's in your bulletin, so fill in the blanks. The church at its best is the best community around. When the church is actually being the church, it is the best community around. You can find something at the church you can't find at the coffee shop or the country club or the civic organization you belong to. I believe even with all the warts and mistakes and downfalls that the church has had, it's still the best community in the world. I know some days we get sideways with each other, or we get too political, or for some people, not political enough. But when we do church the way God intended us to be, it can be really, really special. You see, the world can pick out a phony anywhere. This week, by the way, if you are on Facebook and I am a friend on Facebook, be assured that somewhere along the line I'm probably going to read something that you post. So this week I was looking at Facebook earlier in the week, and I noticed this post by a 16-year-old young man in our church. And he was kind of giving a profile of himself. So you could go on this post and you could find out, I'm just going to say his name, you could find out what Adam believes and who he is and what he likes and what he doesn't like. It was really revealing. So I read through it. I thought, this is awesome. You know what he put for his dislike, his number one dislike? Fakes. And I said, amen, when I read it. I hate fakes. The world hates fakes. We want the real thing. If you are a Dr. Pepper drinker, I don't raise your hands. There are some in the room who drink Dr. Pepper. And you're known as a pepper. That's all we have to say right there. You don't want Mr. Pibb. You'll drink it if you have to, but you want the real Dr. Pepper, which is really carbonated prune juice, by the way. You just didn't know that. You want the real thing. You don't want a fake. You don't want a wannabe. How many of us have bought sunglasses? You know, we're at the beach or we're somewhere and they're selling them on the street and we buy them, it says Gucci on it. Only we look at them a little closer and we realize that they've misspelled Gucci and it's a knockoff, and instead of a Gucci we got a Gucky, and it falls apart 3 days later and we wonder, how come I spent so much money on those Gucci sunglasses? You do not have permission to be authentic. You do not have a biblical encouragement to be authentic. You have a mandate, and that's letter A. You have a mandate to be authentic. We are ordered to be authentic. We are expected to be authentic. You don't need permission to be that way. You don't need any encouragement to be that way. It is expected of you. People that follow Jesus Christ ought to be the most real and honest people on the planet. It's not optional and not only for Sundays. We've been called to be the most uniquely honest people the world has ever known. I want to tell you about a man who had an unbelievable resume. Everywhere he went, he planted churches. Everywhere he went, he taught those churches what it meant to be an authentic Christian. He wrote at least 13 books in our New Testament. His name is Paul. And that's point B. Paul has set the example for us. Paul set the example for us of what it means to be authentic and real. So I didn't tell you earlier, I should have mentioned it earlier. I want you to turn to 2 Corinthians 12. I'm going to read verses 5 to 10. It was kind of funny. I have to tell you this little sidelight. I was in the kitchen just before church, and Archie was in there, and Pastor Archie, as I call him. One day he's going to be up here preaching. He just doesn't know it yet. So he asked me what the word is. I said, the word for the day is thorn. He said, thorn? I've got a coffee cup that this really neat lady down at Patrick Dugan's, that's a plug for them, gave me this coffee cup, and it talks about a thorn. He said, 2 Corinthians 12 talks about it. And I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to preach about. So let's read it, verses 5 to 10 in the New Living Translation. Listen to these words. This will blow you away. That experience is worth boasting about, but I'm not going to do it. I will boast only about my weaknesses. If I wanted to boast, I would be no fool in doing so, because I would be telling the truth. But I won't do it because I don't want anyone to give me credit beyond what they can see in my life or hear in my message. Even though I have received such a wonderful revelations from God, so to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, no, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, I am strong. And I want to tell you, in 2023, that message does not compute to the world. We don't want to highlight our weaknesses. We want to highlight our victories, our successes. We want to be like a super athlete and scream and yell and tell everybody how great we are. What do we do with our weaknesses? We sweep them under that proverbial rug. Most of us don't even have rugs anymore in our houses. What about our conversations last week at the Christmas dinner table? Were you told not to bring up certain subjects because that starts a feud? And were you told not to mention Cousin Eddie because that starts a feud? We all have a Cousin Eddie, by the way, in our family. We want to hide all that, but God views it a different way. Number 2, God wants to highlight your thorn. God wants to highlight your thorn, and then directly into that point A, God works best in our weaknesses. God says, I want to highlight your weaknesses, Paul, because that is where I work best. God says, I'm going to use you in your weakness, and it's going to blow you away when I do. Because you are most open to the leading of God when we are weak. When we focus on our strength, our egos get in the way, and we think we know even better than God, and we don't want to listen to him. I want you to know also, this kind of might be a surprise to you, that Paul was not walking along the side of the road and stepped on a thorn and got a thorn in his foot, or he didn't brush against a tree or a bush that had thorns and got a thorn in his shoulder. It says it was given to him. And that's point B. Your thorn is a gift from God. It's important for us to realize it's a gift from God. We aren't sure what Paul's thorn was. Most of it think it was his poor eyesight, because he makes reference to having to write in big letters. And trust me, I can understand that. If you looked at my manuscript, I guarantee you it's not in 12 font, it's in 16 font, so I can read it. Okay? I don't know what thorn God gave him. I don't know what God has given you. But I want to ask you, what is your sore spot? What is your thorn in your life? What is that spot in your life that when a certain word is spoken, you tighten up and you instantly become irritable? We all have one or more. For me, probably my thorn is my desire to please people. My wife calls it a people pleaser. It comes actually as part of just being a pastor. You do want to try to please people. But sometimes it can get out of balance. And I can be pleasing people for the wrong reason. I can, look at me, I'm over here. See what I did? Aren't I just a wonderful guy? That's how we begin to think. Maybe your thorn is comparison, and you like to compare yourself to everyone else. I don't drink as much as my neighbor does. I don't beat my wife as much as my neighbor does. If you are in sales, or you are in a business that achievement is based upon production, it's easy to get stuck in comparison. We want to be the best. We want to be the best salesman. We want to be the greatest of all time at that, whatever it is. If you're an athlete, you watch him today. You listen to a football game this afternoon. He's the highest paid tight end in the entire NFL. He's the highest paid. You want to be known as that. You want to be known as the greatest of all time. Or at least paid the highest at your position. maybe it's depression or anxiety. I wasn't completely caught off guard, but last year I preached a series for about 5 weeks on anxiety and depression. And I was frankly a little surprised by the number of people who said to me, "Boy, you were speaking to me today." You would have never known that they ever suffer from anxiety or depression. But there are a lot of people that do. And as I said then, and I'll say it again today, we need to honor them and respect them and love them and help them through that, because for many of us who don't normally even suffer from depression, the ravages of the pandemic were really hard on us. Maybe it's a physical ailment. I think of Johnny Erickson Tata. She was a teenager in 1967. She dove into Chesapeake Bay and hit her head on the bottom and broke her neck. And she's been paralyzed ever since, 55 years now, from the neck down. You've read her books, you may have seen her artwork. She has ministered to literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around our globe, even though she does it from a wheelchair that's all she's ever known. Or I think of a lady, a wonderful lady. Boy, I would have loved to have met this lady. Her name is Fanny Crosby. She wrote more than 8,000 hymns and songs, gospel songs. Songs like "Draw Me Near" and "To God Be the Glory." In our hymnal alone, there are 16 hymns written by Fanny Crosby, who was blind, could not see. But her blindness gave her a perception of God the rest of us couldn't comprehend. So she viewed it not as a thorn, but as a gift from God that allowed her to write some of the most beautiful songs in this hymnal. 16 just in our hymnal alone. Some of you are sitting here today and you're saying, "Preacher, that's all good, but I don't think I have a sore spot or an issue." And I want to tell you, that's your sore spot and an issue. It's called denial. Some of us have it. We think everybody else has got one, but not us. So what did Paul do? What did it say? It said he begged the Lord 3 times to take it away. 3 times, but the Lord said, nope, not going to do it. You see, we do the same things. We tell God, "We need you to take this away, God, whatever it is. I can't deal with it anymore. I don't want it." We tell God what to do all the time. We tell him, "Lord, help me get this new job. Help me ace that test." And he answers us the same way that he answered Paul. And the answer to Paul is that beautiful 9th verse, and I have it highlighted. It says, each time God said, this is what he said. Listen to this, folks. "My grace is all you need. My power works best in your weaknesses. My grace is all you need." That leads us to our final point. God's answer to our thorn or to our weakness is his grace. God's answer to our thorn is his grace. Paul grew up to understand that because of the thorn in his flesh, he wasn't being punished by God. It was a gift of grace. His sore spot and your sore spot and my sore spot are gifts from God, even though we don't want them, and we'll do anything we can to get rid of them. God says, no, I'm going to leave them there, because otherwise you will come to this conclusion. If he takes all those things away from us, here's the conclusion, and he's absolutely right. The conclusion is, if I take all those things away from you, you'll think, look at me. Look what I did. Aren't I special? In the absence of struggles, we would probably admit, I'm pretty good. I've got life by the throat. Look at me, I have earned it all. I'm pretty hot stuff. Now, letter A. If you have your outlines, I want you to take your outlines out, and I want you to write in line A, my thorn is. And I want you to take a minute, and I want you to write in that just for you and God to look at. You don't need to turn them in. If you turn them in, be sure and sign them so I know what you're I'm just teasing you. You see, it is the gift of the thorn that drives us back to the grace of God. And this gift from God has never let us down. The purpose of identifying the thorn is because that is where God says he can work best. Amen. So I ask you, what is that nagging thought that keeps you up at night? What is that statement that someone said 10, 20, 30 or more years ago that every time you hear that, you cannot get it out of your head? Maybe it was a parent who told you you'd never amount to anything. Maybe it was a teacher that told you you're worthless. Maybe it's a spouse or a friend that told you how second rate you were. Don't focus on them. That is your thorn, because that is where God wants to work best in your life in 2023. So here's what I want you all to do. I'm going to make a statement. I want you to repeat the statement after me. I have a thorn, and it is a gift from God. Now say it like you actually believe it. I have a thorn, and it is a gift from God. It is. When God puts a thorn in our life, it's not because he's angry at us. It's not because he doesn't love us. It is because he loves us. He drives us to his grace. The church often projects that we have our act totally together. We are clean, pristine, and perfect. Come and join us. But I want to tell you, the world isn't buying it. The world is not buying that. In the first place, we don't have our act together. We don't have to be perfect. We aren't perfect. But we do need to be authentic. We need to be pointing people to the one who is perfect, and that's Jesus Christ. We need them to see Jesus in us, because Jesus is enough. Amen. You don't have permission to be a work in progress. You don't have to be allowed to be imperfect. We are called to it. And that's letter B. We have a mandate to be works in progress. We are mandated to be the most authentic people in the world. And when we are, we will highlight our weaknesses, not our strengths, not our accomplishments. Paul said, I'm a work in progress. And we need to understand that God keeps working through it. That we are not junk. Don't let anyone ever tell you that either. So in 2023, let's be a people who reflect Jesus Christ and lead people to him who was perfect, because this is what the world truly needs. And the conclusion is the world needs us to be authentic and honest people. The world needs us to be authentic and honest people. So I ask you today, are you looking for a place to belong? I want to tell you, we'd love for you to become a part of our church. We are not perfect people. I can tell you, my wife will verify it. I am not a perfect preacher. But I want us to be as authentic and honest and real as we can possibly be. I want us to be a church that reflects Jesus Christ and allows God to work in our weaknesses, not our strengths. We're going to sing a great, great song. It's probably about 50, 60 years old. It's in your hymnal. It's 429. They'll know we are Christians by our love. We've sung it for years at camp and in our churches. Let's close today with They'll Know We Are Christians by Our Love.